Freedom is to have a choice. For example, when you choose between two political systems.
No, that's not exactly what she says. That's a traditional view shaped by English philosophy. According to this view, freedom is the ability of an individual to make autonomous decisions. This belief fits very well into our consumer world, where people can choose between different products. This is then referred to as freedom.
And Hannah Arendt?
The roots of this concept of freedom lies in Christianity, where one can choose between good and evil. But for her, freedom is neither an inner monologue nor a choice. She traces her understanding of freedom back to antiquity. Back then, freedom is always political.
Democracy already existed in ancient times. People could vote for one of two candidates.
In the ancient polis, every man expected to be politically active. For Hannah Arendt, freedom is the ability to start something new, to do something unexpected, to be spontaneous. For her, freedom and action are one and the same.
Men are free, as distinguished from their possessing the gift for freedom, as long as they act, neither before nor after. For to be free and to act are the same.
According to Hannah Arendt, our capacity for freedom is inherent from birth. It's a new beginning that has no past. We are born into the world anew. This means that we can start something new again and again later in life.
The fact that man is capable of action means that the unexpected can be expected from him, that he is able to perform what is infinitely improbable. And this again is possible only because each man is unique, so that with each birth something uniquely new comes into the world.
There are no buts about that.
In this respect, freedom is not dependent on the causal chain. For an action to be considered free, there does not need to be a condition for it.
It is in the nature of beginning that something new is started, which cannot be expected from whatever may have happened before. This character of startling unexpectedness is inherent in all beginnings and in all origins.
But if everything is always a new beginning, then total chaos would reign.
Even those who act freely never act alone. If they do not coordinate their actions with others and incorporate them into their own, their actions will fizzle out. In this respect, one never acts ex nihilo. Even a free action exists only on the basis of what already exists. One is always dependent on the help of others.
A candidate can propose a political program based on his own beliefs.
Politics is not about implementing predetermined programs, but about creating something new through collective action. It is spontaneity that makes politics both possible and necessary. Hannah Arendt does not believe that autonomous action is possible.
Why shouldn't someone be able to act completely autonomously?
Because we cannot exist alone. Freedom only exists with other people. Plurality is a condition for human existence. Without others, we cannot survive on our planet Earth.
Plurality is the condition of human action because we are all the same, that is, human, in such a way that nobody is ever the same as anyone else who ever lived, lives, or will live.
The world is populated by people, not just one person. We need each other. We act together or in relation to others. When we act, someone else is always involved. That is what she means by plurality.
But what if I retreat into nature alone? I can do whatever I want on my own.
Firstly, everyone has to grow up before they can be autonomous. Then they can choose to live alone in the wilderness, but hardly anyone does that. We are not made for that. Even monks who retreat into meditation do so within a monastic community.
I admit it. If everyone isolated themselves from each other and lived in solitude, the human species would soon cease to exist.
A life without speech and without action, on the other hand, and this is the only way of life that, in earnest, has renounced all appearance and all vanity, in the biblical sense of the word, is literally dead to the world. It has ceased to be a human life because it is no longer lived among men.
She is right, of course. Ultimately, everyone lives in a community, whether it's small or large.
Acting means taking the initiative, bringing the new and unexpected into the world. This also means that you cannot act in isolation from others. In other words, you cannot act independently. Everyone has a different perspective from which to judge events.
And then everyone has a different opinion.
But it doesn't stop there. Actions only become meaningful when they are perceived and recognized by others. That is why plurality is a condition for actions. An action requires appearing in public, making one's intentions known through words and deeds, and gaining the approval of others. This is only possible in a context defined by plurality.
Man's inability to rely upon himself or to have complete faith in himself, which is the same thing, is the price human beings pay for freedom, and the impossibility of remaining unique masters of what they do, of knowing its consequences and relying upon the future, is the price they pay for plurality and reality, for the joy of inhabiting together with others a world whose reality is guaranteed for each by the presence of all.
I wonder, if plurality and collective action are so important, what becomes of the individual? Does the individual not matter at all?
Plurality has two consequences. On the one hand, we are all dependent on each other, and in this respect, we all have the same rights. On the other hand, Arendt does not doubt that everyone is unique. No two people are interchangeable, because everyone is an individual, with their own biography and their own convictions. Therefore, plurality means that every person is different.
I think so too. Even the two of us are very different.
Because everyone is different, everyone acts differently. At the same time, however, we need each other and our actions are linked. This creates a network of actions and relationships. This network can be infinitely complex and unpredictable.
Human plurality, the basic condition of both action and speech, has the twofold character of equality and distinction. If men were not equal, they could neither understand each other and those who came before them, nor plan for the future and foresee the needs of those who will come after them. If men were not distinct, each human being distinguished from any other who is, was, or will ever be, they would need neither speech nor action to make themselves understood.
For Arendt, collective action is always political. The rules that shape our lives are shaped by politics, an exchange in the public sphere.
Well, that all sounds very nice. So, can all problems be solved through a good conversation?
Not only with words, but by acting. To act means being able to do the unforeseen. In line with this idea, Arendt discusses concrete examples of action in modern times, such as revolutions and popular uprisings. Her thesis is:
revolutions are the only political events which confront us directly and inevitably with the problem of beginning.
a revolution creates a new political sphere. Within this sphere, free action becomes possible. Her favorite example is the American Revolution.
Why the American Revolution in particular?
Because this revolution focused on the Constitution, a constitution that guarantees people's freedom.
Well, the freedom of white people. Black people had to wait a few more years.
Revolutions cannot create an ideal state, but they can bring about improvements. They can also fail. She cites the revolutionary clubs of the French Revolution, the Paris Commune of 1871, and the resistance against Hitler in World War II as examples. In all these cases, individuals had the courage to interrupt their everyday routine and step out of their private life. By doing so, they created a public sphere in which freedom could emerge.
But every revolution also brings chaos.
Its results are not always positive. Sometimes they lead to dictatorship. Hannah Arendt does not dispute this. Every truly new beginning is random. A revolution is not determined by any causal orders, if it is genuinely a new beginning. It seems to arise out of nowhere. Just as the beginning is not determined, neither is the end.
It is because of this already existing web of human relationships, with its innumerable conflicting wills and intentions, that action almost never achieves its purpose.
So it seems that revolutions aren't so good after all.
They are the most effective remedy against dictatorships because they are their opposite. In a totalitarian regime, everything must be predictable.
Totalitarian bureaucracy, with a more complete understanding of the meaning of absolute power, intruded upon the private individual and his inner life with equal brutality. The result of this radical efficiency has been that the inner spontaneity of people under its rule was killed, along with their social and political activities.
What she says about ruling a state also applies to every individual. Autonomy does not lead to freedom. Freedom is not a private inner experience. Rather, it arises only through political action in the public sphere, not through the absence of external constraints. Freedom is not freedom from something as liberals define it.
This is a new beginning.
Hannah Arendt presents a radical alternative.
If it were true that sovereignty and freedom are the same, then indeed no man could be free, because sovereignty, the ideal of uncompromising self-sufficiency and mastership, is contradictory to the very condition of plurality. No man can be sovereign because not one man, but men inhabit the earth, which makes him depend upon the help of others.
For her, freedom is not an individual right, but it always occurs in relation to others. It is not about doing whatever you want. The liberal definition of freedom raises questions about morality. At what point does freedom become immoral because it harms others?
There has never been complete agreement on this.
If freedom is the result of joint action, it will always have a moral dimension. Consideration for others is part of this.
Freedom is something that is experienced collectively.
The consequence of this is that freedom is not autonomy. It does not mean having control over oneself. Hannah Arendt believes it is impossible to achieve greater freedom through greater independence.
Politically, this identification of freedom with sovereignty is perhaps the most pernicious and dangerous consequence of the philosophical equation of freedom and free will. For it leads either to a denial of human freedom, namely, if it is realized that whatever men may be, they are never sovereign, or to the insight that the freedom of one man, or a group, or a body politic can be purchased only at the price of the freedom of all others.
Just as little as the individual is free when he has autonomous power, so too is a state unfree in his choices when it attempts to rule alone and sovereignly.
The famous sovereignty of political bodies has always been an illusion, which, moreover, can be maintained only by the instruments of violence, that is, with essentially non-political means.
Without plurality in political decision-making, violence becomes the only means of maintaining power. This is a far cry from freedom.
Those who become victims of violence never feel free.
The prerequisite for freedom is engaging with others. This involves proposing new ideas and responding to those of others. It is possible with the separation of powers. Such an exchange can only be achieved in a system of checks and balances. The separation of powers leads to freedom. One should never submit to others. On the contrary, one should always engage with others critically. This is not a solitary activity. It is a dialogue.
I believe that this dialogue can never be concluded.
If you want to be free, then this is only the beginning.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe and we'll see you next time.